Behind weathered walls and shattered windows lie the forgotten stories of lives abruptly suspended in time. These abandoned houses, scattered across the landscape like discarded memories, harbor more than just dust and decay. They guard dark secrets that have long eluded the light of day. From unsolved disappearances to whispers of occult rituals, each creaking floorboard and peeling wallpaper conceals a mystery waiting to be unearthed. Join us as we dare to cross the thresholds of these forsaken dwellings, where the past lingers like a restless spirit, and uncover the chilling truths that their former inhabitants left behind.
Bielitz Heilstätten Hospital, about 30 miles outside of Berlin, is an enormous complex. It was built in 1898 by the Berlin Workers' Health Insurance Corporation. It started out housing tuberculosis patients. This was a time when tuberculosis was a real problem, a leading cause of death. So the 60-building facility was designed to give patients the best possible care with fresh air and rest. During World War I, the hospital transformed into a military hospital for the Imperial German Army, and in late 1916, a young Adolf was even treated here after he was wounded in the Battle of the Somme. You wanted abandoned buildings with evil histories? Doesn't get much more evil than that guy. The hospital was also used in World War II as a field hospital for wounded German soldiers. After the war, though, the Soviets took control of the hospital and it became a Soviet military hospital. One of the most well-known patients during the Soviet era was Erich Honecker, the last leader of East Germany. He was treated for liver cancer there in the early 90s. Now today there are parts of Bielitz Heilstätten that are still used, mostly for neurological rehabilitation and Parkinson's research, but most of the buildings are abandoned. If you can't tell by, looking at these images, crumbling walls, peeling paint, rusted hospital equipment left behind, it's pretty nightmarish. Even if you are 100% staunchly, just do not believe in the paranormal, I'm sure you'd still get the creeps wandering around this place. Next is another abandoned hospital, this one with an even darker history though. It was an asylum. Athens Lunatic Asylum in Ohio, often referred to simply as the Ridges. The asylum opened in 1874, and the first patient, a young girl with epilepsy who'd been locked away by her parents because they believed she was possessed by a demon. Quite a start. Now, before it closed in 1993, it housed a variety of patients, including Civil War vets, rebellious young people, homeless people, the elderly, and even violent criminals. As the number of patients increased, so did the number of buildings. By the time it was abandoned, there were 78 buildings on the property. There are also 3 cemeteries on the grounds. The main building was supposed to house up to maybe 570 something patients, but at its peak, the asylum treated over 2,000. That is some severe overcrowding. This combined with medical staff who often lacked experience made for a pretty awful environment. Lobotomies, hydrotherapy, and electric shock therapy were common treatments, and you could land yourself here for a wide range of reasons. Menopause, menstruation issues, drinking too much, epilepsy, even asthma. You could even end up in this place for having a little too much fun with yourself in the pants area. So I would not be in this place at all. And once you were admitted, all contact with family would be cut off, which would probably be a good thing if you were in here for the latter reason. A lot of the nearly 1,700 people who died at the asylum were buried on the premises, with only a number marking their graves. But Ohio locals all know about the story of Margaret Schilling. Margaret was a patient who went missing on December 1st, 1978. 42 days later, her decomposing body was found in a rarely used area of Building 20. Her body had left a permanent stain on the concrete floor, which is still visible to this day. Yeah, that's just icky. Here's something a little different, an abandoned chemical weapons plant. Okonoshima Island off the coast of Japan has a pretty pleasant reputation these days. There are tons of rabbits that live there. So many, in fact, that the place is often referred to as Rabbit Island. But there's a darker side to this place. The island was also home to a top-secret chemical weapons plant. The Japanese government chose this remote location to produce mustard gas from 1927 to 1945. Over 6,000 1,000 tons of mustard gas was manufactured on the island. The chemical weapons plant was part of a highly classified operation, and its existence was so secretive that the island was actually removed from maps. The workers at the plant were exposed to harmful chemicals, leading to severe health issues and, in some cases, death. At the end of World War II, to cover up the activities that took place, the Japanese military destroyed all records related to the chemical weapons production. Now, today, the abandoned plant is still standing, but visitors are not allowed inside because there's still a risk of contamination. In 1988, the Japanese government finally acknowledged the island's dark history and opened the Okinoshima Poison Gas Museum. St. Gerard's Hospital in Warwickshire has been abandoned since 1988. In its early days, it was used as a hospital to treat young patients, many of whom were orphans, and later on it was used to treat soldiers during World War II. So it's safe to assume this place has some lingering spirits left behind, if you believe in that sort of thing anyway. Even if you don't though, you can't deny how eerie the place looks. The place dates back to the early 20th century. It was originally built as a hospital for a boys' home. A lot of the patients coming from the home were in poor health due to their backgrounds, and there was a clear need for dedicated medical care. So the Birmingham Diocesan Rescue Society for the Protection of Homeless and Friendless Catholic Children was established, and St. Gerard's Hospital opened its doors in 1913. Imagine just being referred to as friendless, you know? You're already poor, you're already sick, and now they just assume you don't have friends? I don't know, that's kind of mean. But anyway, during World War I, it was used to care for wounded soldiers, and after the war, the hospital shifted its focus to treating tuberculosis. Do dolls creep you out? If so, then steer clear of this next spot. The exact location of the place has been kept secret in order to keep vandals away, but it's in Spain, an abandoned doll factory. The place has been left untouched since the 80s. The factory produced porcelain dolls, often using real human hair, which only adds to how unsettling the atmosphere is here. The building itself is 3 stories tall. The floor in one wing has collapsed over the years, but there isn't much graffiti or signs of exploration. Again, the exact location has been kept secret, and that just makes the place feel even more empty and eerie. When the factory closed, it seems like everyone just vanished in the middle of their workday, leaving everything behind. There are boxes of doll parts, machinery, and half-finished dolls just laying on the assembly line. Yeah, it's freaky. Next up, we have another psychiatric hospital, Hellingly Hospital in East Sussex, England. The hospital opened in 1903 and had a reputation for its harsh treatments, including electroshock therapy and, again, lobotomies. It was originally built to ease the overcrowding at the Haywards Heath Asylum, but Hellingly ended up becoming overcrowded itself. Mainly because, again, you could find yourself locked away in a mental institution for pretty much anything back in the day. One of the most notorious treatments used here was electroconvulsive therapy. This would involve sending an electric current through the brain, inducing a brief seizure. The idea was that this electrical activity could reset the brain and help cure severe mental health issues. Now, aside from how painful this would be, patients could experience some pretty severe side effects like losing their memory, or some would even just end up in catatonic states. It was abandoned in 1994, and some of the people who investigate the place today claim they've encountered ghostly apparitions. The whole place is incredibly unsettling, seeing as it's an abandoned psychiatric hospital where many patients were horribly mistreated. One of the creepiest sections, though, has to be this one, the morgue, where the metal body trays have been left behind. Waverly Hills Sanatorium in Kentucky is said to be one of the most terrifying buildings in America, and it's not hard to see why. Construction began in 1908, and it finally opened in 1910 to treat, again, tuberculosis patients. Because of how contagious it was, patients were quarantined here. The sanatorium was built as a self-sufficient community with its own zip code, post office, and farmland. Doctors and staff were also required to stay on the grounds in order to prevent the spread of the disease. Waverly Hills closed in 1961, but reopened the following year as a nursing home. This phase lasted until about 1981 when it closed again. The property then sat abandoned for about 2 decades. Today, Waverly Hills is notorious for its ghost stories. Over 6,000 people are believed to have died here, so that's not all that surprising. This place is also infamous for its body chute, a tunnel that was used to discreetly transport corpses. Apparently, this is a hotspot for paranormal activity activity, wonder why. Room 502 also gets a lot of activity. This room housed mentally ill tuberculosis patients, and a nurse was also said to have taken her life here. Next up, we have Letchworth Village in New York. The complex of over 130 buildings was constructed in 1911, a place to treat the mentally and physically ill. It was made to house around 2,000 patients, operating as a self-sufficient village. Patients tended farms, worked in shops, and lived in smaller, more personal dwellings, but just like with most of these places, it became overcrowded. Insufficient funding and staffing really didn't help either, so the intentions were good, but it didn't stay that way. Patients were often forgotten in this isolated community, and Letchworth also became known for using patients in clinical trials, especially when it came to the experimental polio vaccine in the 50s. The institution finally closed in 1996 after decades of reports of mistreatment and neglect. There's a small cemetery on the grounds with about 900 shallow graves, most who died very young, and because so many of the patients had no contact with their families, there aren't any names on their headstones, just numbers. Pennhurst State School and Hospital in Spring City, Pennsylvania was built in 1908, originally named the Eastern Estate Institution for the Feeble-Minded and Epileptic. The institution soon became overcrowded, and for decades there was tons of controversy surrounding the place. Patients lived in harsh living conditions, forced labor was also a thing. A lot of the bad press started coming to light in the 60s and early 70s. The awful conditions were exposed in a series of investigative reports and lawsuits. The reports detailed the overcrowding, the unsanitary living conditions, and the neglect and mistreatment of the patients by the staff. In 1977, a lawsuit ruled that the conditions at Pennhurst violated patients' constitutional rights, but the place wouldn't close down until 1987. Riverview Hospital in Vancouver, Canada. The hospital opened in 1913 as the Esondale Hospital for the Insane. It was later renamed Riverview Hospital and became one of the largest mental health institutions in British Columbia. It had been built to help alleviate the overcrowding at other mental health facilities in the province. The facility included big gardens, greenhouses, and farms where patients could also work. Surprise, surprise, but overcrowding became a problem here too. The hospital's population peaked in the 50s with over 4,500 patients. Treatments like electroconvulsive therapy, insulin shock therapy, and lobotomies were also used. Things started to shift in the 60s and 70s though, with a focus on more community-based care. A lot of the patients were released into the community, but many of them didn't have good support systems in place and ended up living on the street. The hospital officially closed in 2012, and some of the buildings are still in use. Most of them have been left to decay though.
Starting off this countdown, we have Pablo Escobar. It was a very smart decision for Christian de Boudoir and his wife to purchase Pablo Escobar's old abandoned mansion. Legend goes that Escobar would hide tons of money all over the place, so chances are there's money stashed away somewhere in the walls. And in 2016, they made a pretty miraculous discovery while excavating the property. They found a safe hidden beneath the entrance of the house. The safe was about 2 feet by 2 feet and weighed about 600 to 700 pounds. But sadly, its contents were never revealed. But because it was hidden on the property, chances are it contains a boatload of money. Moving on down at number 9, we have the vintage house. Urban explorer and photographer that goes by the name Freaktography has found some amazing discoveries over the years. Most of the stuff he finds are very old and dirty and damaged, but in rare cases he comes across some very interesting finds. In this case, he was exploring an abandoned suburban home from the 70s. Inside, it was filled with vintage gems, like vintage collectibles like old Barbie dolls, Polaroid cameras, and a bunch of figurines like Yoda, E.T., and a Star Wars figurine set. Those things must be worth a lot by now. Moving on to number 8, we have the farmhouse. So back in 2017, Reddit user Evil English decided to explore his grandparents' old abandoned house in Tennessee. While doing so, he noticed a block of concrete in the floor by the staircase. The concrete had a round cap on it, and when he pried it off, he noticed it was a safe. Yeah, a secret safe that was built into the wooden floors. The family then hired a locksmith to open the safe, and inside was a collection of valuable items. He found coins, silver bars, cash, and antiques, all worth thousands of dollars. Coming in at number 7, we have the money in the walls. In 2007, antiques dealer Jeff Beetleman was asked to scope out an abandoned house by the late daughter's owner. She had always heard stories of treasure being buried in the walls, and she wanted to see if it was true. Plus, it was an abandoned house, so she had no problem with tearing a few walls down. And turns out that this legend was true. They found a bunch of old coins from 1826 to 1964, worth $200,000. Turns out that her relatives would use a slit in the wall as like a giant piggy bank. In our 6th spot, we have the cellar. When you're exploring an abandoned house, especially the attic or cellar, chances are you're more likely to find a dead body stashed away there than anything worth money. But that wasn't the case for some workers in France. Workers were demolishing an old abandoned house when they came across exactly 600 gold coins in a container in the cellar. The coins were from Belgium and dated back to the 1870s. They featured the king from back then, King Leopold II's face on them. It said that these coins are worth about 100,000 euros, which is about 118,000 American dollars. We're now at our 5th and halfway mark with the movie posters. Back in 2007, a man named Blair Peter moved into a home in Alberta, Canada, and began renovating it. The house was originally built in the early 1900s and it needed some work. But while lifting up some floorboards, he found tons of old original movie posters. He continued on renovating the house and found more movie posters stuffed in the crawl space and under the roof of the house. So it's thought that they were used as insulation, and obviously it wasn't worth money back then. But now, cha-ching. He found more than 360 posters. Apparently the man that owned the house was the owner of a local movie theater. So some of these posters were the ones hung up in the lobby of the theater. It was thought that Peter could get around $50,000 for some of the posters. That's one plus of buying an older house. There's a chance it's filled with hidden treasures just like this. In our 4th spot, we have the time capsule house. Again, another abandoned house where the urban explorer photography struck gold. So story goes that he had driven by this abandoned house a number of times, but had no clue it was actually abandoned. That was until one day he noticed the windows were boarded up. A month later, the door was open. Time for him to enter. When he went inside, it was like he entered a time capsule. The house was filled with vintage items. He found old board games, antiques, and artifacts. Items that would be worth thousands. But as he always claims, he never moves anything from the house. He just photographs them and then leaves. He takes nothing but photos and leaves nothing but footprints. That's his motto. If he did take these items though, that dude would be rich by now. Coming in at number 3, we have the Mayan artifacts. Imagine being a junk removal specialist. Like, that's an actual job. You get paid to come in and clean up other people's crap. It doesn't sound that rewarding, but in this one case, it definitely was. In 2009, a team of junk removal specialists were called into an abandoned Soho apartment to clear things up. But inside, they found a bunch of valuable artifacts, including an ancient Mayan artifact, ancient figurines, and some valuable bowls and jugs. Altogether, these items are said to be worth around $19,000. Yikes. And to think that almost ended up in the landfill. Coming in at number 2, we have Superman. In 2013, a contractor was tearing down some walls in an abandoned house that he planned to renovate and then move into with his 4 children. While doing so, he found that the walls were stuffed with newspapers for insulation. But among the newspaper was a 1938 comic book showcasing the debut of Superman. It said that it was a virgin copy. That's like actually what they call it, but okay, sorry. It said that it was a virgin copy. Despite it being in not the best condition, the comic still sold at auction for $175,000. He actually would have gotten more from it, but in an argument with his relatives, the back of the cover got ripped, which decreased its value by $75,000. But still, that's one lucky man. And in our number 1 spot, we have the rolls of cash. I swear, Urban explorer Freaktography has the best of luck. So he was out exploring an abandoned home near where he lived. He said that the house was abandoned for almost 30 years. While in the house setting up to take some photos, he noticed something odd sticking out from behind the mattress. It was a tin, and inside were bundles of tightly rolled up American and Canadian money. He said there was about $6,800 there. Now, he could have just made off with the money, but instead, he did the right thing. He tracked down the original owners and returned the money back to them. They had no clue the money was even stashed there, but they were incredibly grateful.
Kicking off our list at number 10, Room 206. This gives me Stephen King 1408 vibes, and I'm not sure that you're ready. Next time you visit Florida, make sure you read every customer review before you check into a hotel, because some of them might be full of ghosts. That might be a thing that you just might have to deal with. Room 206 at the Super on International Drive. Apparently, it's super haunted. Guests have reported the bed shaking in the middle of the night, probably terrible for your sleep, or freezing cold air even though the AC is turned off. And worst of all, guests have seen their bed look as though somebody was sleeping there moments before, even though it was perfectly made right before they checked in. Can ghosts squat? Is that legal? We've got a couple of spirit squatters in our room. Gotta move. Number 9, Disney on Ice. Many families love to visit Orlando at this time of year. The theme parks there are spectacular, especially Disney World. I went once when I was younger, but I don't recall ever seeing a real life Walt Disney. I don't know, maybe it has something to do with the fact that he died in 1966. Who knows? But never say never. One of Orlando's oldest tales is that Walt Disney had his body cryogenically frozen after his death. And right now, apparently it's being stored in a bunker underneath the theme park. I mean, that's a bit more creative than being cremated. I'll give him that. It's pretty Walt Disney of him just to freeze himself forever. A grad from the University of Central Florida Film School, Benjamin Lancaster, they actually made a film about this whole idea. It's called The Further Adventures of Walt's Frozen Head. That's a family classic, some would say. Number 8, Scarlett O'Hara's. You're gonna need 2 pieces of ID for this next one, alright? Perhaps the most haunted bar in Florida, located in St. Augustine, Scarlett O'Hara's is haunted by a past owner. Many believe that spirit likes to make itself known to guests. That's always fun. Try and go grab a pint and now you got a ghoul in front of you. That spirit is one of George Coley. Now George sadly bit the bullet one night when he was in his bathtub, so now we have a series of unexplainable events. Plates and glasses will sometimes move across the bar on their own, and the jukebox keeps playing Help Me Rhonda even when it's unplugged. So that's absolutely terrifying. If you want to check it out now, be warned, because it's a full-on tourist attraction at this point. But if you go, you can pose alongside the same bathtub that George Coley died in. Yeah, how lovely is that? Are we going to Disney World? Nah, even better, Scarlett O'Hara's. Yeah, you're gonna love it. Number 7, Stranahan House. You don't want to be stranded at the Stranahan House. It's gonna be bad news. Fort Lauderdale has a few haunted hidden gems, and the oldest house just happens to be the most haunted. What do you know? What odds are that? What odds are that? What are those odds? There we go. The house's OG owner was Frank Stranahan, and today, if you visit ye old stomping grounds, well, you might catch Frank in a photo or two. It's said that Frank still oversees the place, and he regularly shows up in guests' photos. So this ghost likes to photobomb. That's pretty amazing. I kind of like that. I suppose being trapped in the same house for all of eternity probably gets a little boring from time to time. Just to pop into a photo, throw some peace signs up, and then disappear back into the walls. Ivy Stranahan, Frank's late wife, she also has made an appearance or two. Nice. True love is haunting the same house forever. Guests have felt a cold hand on their shoulder, and her perfume still lingers in the hallway. Must have been some good, strong stuff. Nice. Now, it's not all fun and games. Augustus Stranahan, aka Frank's father, well, his ghost likes to throw books. It's really aggressive, so heads up for that, I guess, if you go. Cheers. Number 6, the Plaza Resort and Spa. Ah, yes, kick back and relax with ghosts. It's just what you want. You're never alone, I guess. That's a plus side. The Plaza Resort and Spa sounds like a relaxing getaway until you start looking up footage of the actual resort. One's gonna get your attention for sure. Back in August 2013, security cameras captured late night footage of this shape-shifting ghost, some sort of spirit, some scary blob. It's bad news, really, in any regard. What happened was the original building was destroyed by fire in 1909, and current staff will testify that they've seen the ghosts of victims caught in that blaze. How they know? I have no idea, but apparently they do do know. It's a lot of details for one ghost appearance. One of the most common sightings includes a woman whose spirit is known to mess with the elevators and make items in the kitchen disappear. Okay, really? That last one's for sure an employee stealing food. He's like, oh yeah, I don't know. I think a ghost ate that cheesecake, boss. I don't know, spooky stuff, spooky. Number 5, the Blue Anchor Pub. Another bar, another haunted bill to pay. Here we go, debit or credit. Heading over to Delray Beach, the Blue Anchor Pub was built in 1840s in London, but the wooden interior was sent to New York City and then later on sent to Florida in 1996. So yeah, these spirits must be confused. They go from Jack the Ripper to some dude wearing a Yankees hat talking to a TV. Trapped in the wooden interior is the ghost of one Bertha Starkey, who was sadly killed by her husband back in the 1840s. Now, you know Bertha is lurking about when you hear rattling pots in the kitchen, and sometimes if you're really unlucky, you'll hear wailing in the middle of the night. Nice. Again, horrible sleep at this place. The Blue Anchor sounds like a really relaxing time, but every night at 10 o'clock, the current owners will blast the ship horn to scare away her spirit. I don't know, I feel like blaring a ship horn at 10 p.m. is more jarring than some pots and pans moving sometimes. You know what I mean? I'd rather hear the pots and pans than in the middle of the night. No way. Number 4, the Biltmore Hotel. Another hotel to avoid at all costs. Awesome, we love these ones. First of all, do you actually like staying at a hotel? Some people love it. Some people find it super relaxing. I can't help but think about what went on in the bed before me. You know what I mean? Like, you're like, why does this part of the bed feel a little bit caved in? What's going on here? Every time I'm in a hotel, I have the worst dreams and I can't sleep at all. The Biltmore Hotel in the city of Coral Gables is also one of the most haunted hotels in Florida. You've probably heard of this at some point. It all started in 1926 during initial construction. The Biltmore witnessed a foul killing on the 13th floor. The 13th floor of all floors, my God. The Biltmore was also turned into a military hotel during World War II before ultimately being closed and then abandoned later in 1968. Now, the city renovated the hotel later on in the 80s, but it didn't take long for ghost stories to start to spread. It's horrible, horrible past, I mean, more than fair. Now, of course, the most activity is on the 13th floor, so if you do check this one out, really double down, go to the haunted floor, you know, don't just look outside and then book. Go in, stay a night. I can't believe some buildings don't have a 13th floor. Can you imagine that? Well, they do, but everyone pretends that they don't. You know what I mean? They're like, yeah, it's 12. I don't know, we'll see. Are you a 13th floor believer? Comment down below. Me personally, I don't think so, because it's the 14th or the 12th. Or the 13th, I don't know anymore. No one knows anymore. It goes 11, 12, 14. You're like, really? What's the 14s? We know what's going on here, come on. Number 3, Tampa Theater. If you're a fellow theater kid, you're also gonna love this one. Here we go. Tampa Theater opened up in 1926. The theater is now said, of course, to be haunted by a woman that was struck and killed by a carriage on the property. Imagine being hit by a carriage, it's so slow. This was actually before the theater was built, so her spirit has been there for a while. If you go to Tampa Theater today, you might catch a glimpse of that woman in a white gown walking across the mezzanine hallway. This time without carriages whipping through, hopefully, sans carriage. Imagine telling somebody in front of you to sit down during a show, then they just disappear. You're like, I think that was a ghost. I think that was probably a ghost. It says in the playbill, ghost, so maybe that was her. Tampa Theater, of course, has leaned into these claims. Now they offer Ghosts of Tampa Theater Tour, where guests can learn about its haunted history. I'd love to do this tour. I don't know, maybe I'll go to Florida. Who knows? I won't. I'm like, I'm probably not going to. Number 2, Key West Cemetery. A cemetery that's haunted. Get out of town. You don't say. The Beachside Cemetery was built in 1847. Now, it was built specifically for victims of a hurricane that occurred a year prior in 1846. That's terrible. Now, the cemetery is the final resting place for roughly 80,000 to 100,000 people. So yeah, I can only assume there's a ghost or two hanging out. That's extremely tragic. Walking through a graveyard at night is scary enough anytime, but Key West Cemetery is so specific that the entire time you're walking through, you feel connected in a way. Now, me personally, I'm all set. I don't want to feel connected to an 1846 tragedy. I'm all set. I'll go the long way around the cemetery, then I'll meet you on the other side, if anything. But if you're into this kind of thing, they also offer ghost tours, so knock yourself out. There you go. Apparently, it's too scary for children, so that's a plus. Lines will be a little shorter than usual. And finally, number 1, St. Augustine Lighthouse. A scary lighthouse? How? How is that possible? The St. Augustine Lighthouse is located, of course, in Florida and was built between 1871 and 1874. And it's considered Florida's first official lighthouse ever. Imagine that. Boom, let there be light. Hey, I made you a lighthouse. Enjoy, we're all good now. There have been several tragic events over the following years, seeing as it's the first lighthouse ever. Seen a lot of history. But even during initial construction, construction, there were several freak accidents on site. Today, said spirits are still lurking about. Sightings of shadowy figures are common, but just one time, somebody saw a hand coming through the tower door. Yeah, a floaty hand, like from Idle Hands. How terrifying is that? Can you imagine just a Smash Bros hand just lurking near you? Several guests have reported furniture also moving around on its own, which is definitely a hazard. And one person even said that they had some of their arm hairs plucked off of them while they were in the basement. Probably that floaty weird hand just doink. Give me one of those. Another guest felt someone grab their ankle at one point while walking down a hallway, which actually caused them to trip and fall down, so something's going on. I don't know what this ghost hand wants, but it's pretty chaotic to me, it seems. I think the ghost hand wants you to click like if you like this video. I think that's what it wants, really.
Number 10, Satan's Castle, San Bernardino. Yes, this place is called Satan's Castle, and it's a no from me. Satan's Castle sits on a mountainous region that is filled with both religious and satanic lore dating back to the 19th century. There are said to be underground tunnels linking to various points of interest across the mountain, which were used during the Prohibition era. These tunnels were created mostly for transportation and smuggling booze, but also served for darker purposes. One of these tunnels is rumored to connect a Catholic church to Satan's Castle. It is said to have been the grounds for dark, ritualistic practices, which included both human and animal sacrifices, along with other dark ceremonies. Not to mention, inside one of the rooms, a pentagram used to be painted on the ground. Local Christians painted over it with the John 3:16 verse, but the pentagram always bled through. Definitely sounds satanic to me, and I will not be visiting there. Number 9, Preston Castle, Ione. The Preston School of Industry, also known as Preston Castle, was a reform school that opened in June 1894 and was considered one of the oldest and best known reform schools in the United States. The boys there grew their own food, raised livestock, and learned farming trades. Additionally, there was a print shop, bakery, and cobbler shop where the boys could learn skills for self-preservation in the real world. The superintendent controlled the life inside the school, and discipline was extreme. Starvation, isolation, and public paddling and lashings, and severe strategies were common at Preston. Now, this school has seen a lot of death. There are 17 men buried on the school grounds because they died there. Samuel Goins had his life ended after attempting to escape from the school. In 1950, Preston's head housekeeper, Anna Corbin, was beaten to death in the school's basement as well, and they never found out who did it. Employees and visitors believe that these young men are still haunting the school, which only closed in 1960, by the way. Those who have toured the grounds since have reported many strange sights and sounds, slamming doors, falling objects, disembodied voices, and ghostly physical contact. Number 8, Camp Pendleton, Area 41, San Diego. Camp Pendleton is a coastal Marine Corps base with a dark history. This place is divided up into sections, and Area 41 is haunted. Locks have been tampered with, furniture displaced, items gone missing, and strange noises are heard throughout the camp. Many think that this is done by one broken-hearted Marine in particular. This man was in love and had recently asked his girlfriend to marry him. After she had said yes, he thought his life was going great, but it didn't last long. The Marine was in his housing unit when his fiancée got a hold of him and told him that she was ending the relationship. He was so upset that he ended his life in a second-story room of the barracks. Now, some Marines are convinced his spirit remains in the area and haunts Area 41 in particular. A general feeling of unease is common here, and to this day, Marines claim that they hear the faint sound of a man softly humming the Jeopardy game show theme song around the grounds. I'm sorry. What? Number 7. The Hotel de Coriando, San Diego. Hotel de Coriando is a historic hotel that opened in 1888. Kate Morgan has haunted this hotel since 1892, the year she checked in and awaited the arrival of her husband. The two were traveling con artists, and not surprisingly, her husband never showed up, and 4 days later, Kate was found dead at the bottom of an outdoor staircase leading to the Coronado Beach. Today, those who check into Kate's room, which is now room 3312, have had spooky experiences to say the least. Curtains blowing even though the windows are closed, objects moved by unseen hands, murmuring sounds, and even sightings of Kate walking down the hallways and peering out the windows have all been reported. Her ghost is often seen both in the hotel and on the beach. Now room 3519, formerly room 3502, is also haunted. Once a maid's room, it's been the site of numerous paranormal occurrences, such as objects moving around by themselves. Number 6. The Whaley House, San Diego. The Whaley House is the oldest brick structure in Southern California and was the home of Thomas Whaley and his family. At various times, it also housed Whaley's General Store, San Diego's second county courthouse, and the first commercial theater in San Diego. The house has witnessed more history than any other building in the city, and it is extremely haunted. One of the most infamous ghosts there is the spirit of Yankee Jim Robinson. Yankee Jim was hanged in the gallows where the house now stands in 1852 after being convicted of stealing horses. Thomas Whaley himself, who owned and lived in the house with his family years later, said they could hear heavy footsteps going up and down the stairs. Now visitors have reported cold spots and the feeling of their chest and throat tightening within the home. Others claim to have seen Yankee Jim too, an apparition that appears and disappears when you get too close. Today, and for many years, visitors to the house have also reported seeing Thomas. They usually see him wearing a frock coat and pantaloons standing on the second-story landing. Others have seen his wife Anna, usually floating around in the garden or the downstairs room. Her ghost, which appears white and billowy, seems to just drift about and then disappears. Number 5. Winchester Mystery House, San Jose. Now after finding out what this place is, I really want to visit here. I mean, just by the name Mystery House, it's cool. Now some backstory on the house: Sarah Winchester lived a tragic yet interesting life. She married William Wirt Winchester in 1862, who was a very wealthy man. Sadly though, her husband, mother, and father-in-law all passed away within the same year. To deal with her grief, she moved to California after gaining a large inheritance from her husband. Then on top of all of that, Sarah was being haunted by the spirits of those whose lives were ended by the Winchester rifle, which her husband's company had invented. After her husband passed away, a psychic told her to evade the spirits, she would need to move out west, buy a home, and build non-stop. She took 36 years to construct the home, and this house has 6 kitchens, 2,000 doors, 10,000 windows, 17 chimneys, 160 rooms, and many doors and stairs that lead to nowhere. Workers and visitors swear they hear howling at night, loud creaking, and sometimes the kitchen smells like someone is actively cooking. But regardless if you believe in ghosts or not, the house is absolutely stunning. Number 4. Hollywood Roosevelt Hotel, Los Angeles. The Hollywood Roosevelt is considered to be one of the most haunted hotels in Los Angeles. It first opened its doors in 1927 and was a frequent home to Marilyn Monroe, who often stayed in the second floor cabana. Interestingly, the doors to this hotel are still open, allowing visitors to spend the night in Marilyn's suite, and some people claim to have seen Marilyn's ghost smiling and blowing kisses at them in their hotel mirrors. Hotel workers often talk about seeing the ghost of Charlie Chaplin and feel temperatures drop quickly from one room to the next. The apparition of Montgomery Clift has been blamed for patting guests' shoulders and watching maids in room 928, where he stayed for 3 months while filming From Here to Eternity. The ghost of Carole Lombard has also been spotted floating around the upper floors, and in the Blossom Room, where the first Oscars were held, 2 ghosts have been spotted, a presence of a tuxedoed man and a presence of a man in a white suit. Seems like if you want to meet a dead celebrity, the Roosevelt Hotel is the place to go. Number 3. Alcatraz, San Francisco Bay. The famous maximum security prison Alcatraz Federal Penitentiary earned a reputation as one of the most brutal and inhumane prisons in the country during its day. The strong currents around the island and cold water temperatures made escape nearly impossible, and the prison became one of the most notorious in American history. The prison closed in 1963, and the island is now a major tourist attraction. A total of 36 prisoners made 14 escape attempts, 23 were caught alive, 6 had their lives ended by guards during their escape, 2 drowned, and 5 are listed as missing and presumed drowned. Now during its 29 years in use, use, Alcatraz held some of the most notorious American criminals, including Al Capone, George Machine Gun Kelly, and Bumpty Johnson. Today, it's a tourist attraction that many believe to be haunted. Inexplicable events happen, like the sound of someone playing the banjo. Many believe this to be the spirit of Al Capone, who spent his last days at the prison playing a banjo in the shower room to avoid being injured in the yard. The smell of smoke, the sounds of cell doors slamming, disembodied voices, moaning, and screams have also all been reported. Number 2. Queen Mary, Long Beach. Queen Mary is a retired British ocean liner that sailed from 1936 to 1967. She sailed to the port of Long Beach, California, where she is permanently docked. The city of Long Beach bought the ship to serve as a tourist attraction, featuring restaurants, a museum, and a hotel, but claims were made that the ship was haunted. There are resident spirits, including Jackie, the little girl who haunts the first-class pool, John Petter, who was crushed by a watertight door, Senior Second Officer William Eric Stark, who accidentally drank dry cleaning fluid instead of gin, and the cook, who was baked alive by his own kitchen staff during World War II. But most arguably, the most notorious location on the ship for paranormal activity is room B340. Reports claim someone was knocking on the door in the middle of the night, bathroom lights turning on by themselves, the sink faucet turning on and off on its own, and unexplained bathroom doors shutting. Some guests have reported the covers of their bed being pulled off while asleep and waking to see a dark figure standing at the foot of the bed. There are even more stories about this place, but I don't have enough time to fit them all in. If you're really interested in Queen Mary, I say do some homework on it because it definitely gets creepier. And coming in at number 1 is the Cecil Hotel, Los Angeles. The Cecil Hotel opened in 1925 as a well-furnished hostelry frequented by respectable people, but that didn't last long. As downtown became more and more dangerous, the Cecil became a place where bad people stayed, like the Night Stalker aka Richard Ramirez and Austrian killer Jack Unterweger spent time there. The Black Dahlia was rumored to have had her last drink at the hotel bar before she turned up dead a few miles away. In 1962, Pauline Otten jumped from the 9th floor window, ending her life. That same year, Julia Moore jumped from an 8th floor window, and Helen Green from the 7th floor in 1954. The Cecil Hotel may have rebranded itself recently as the Stay on Main, but it just can't shake its reputation as a place where scary things happen. In 2013, the body of Canadian tourist Elisa Lam was found in the hotel's rooftop cistern. Her body was discovered by a hotel maintenance worker investigating complaints of flooding and low water pressure. And yes, people had been showering in and drinking that water. Ugh. And last but not least, the ghost of a boy has reportedly been photographed outside a 4th floor window. Spooky.
And we're starting off this list with 300 Kim Ma Street in Hanoi, Vietnam. This compound has sat abandoned for over 30 years, and it's said to be one of the most haunted houses in the entire city. There are all kinds of tales surrounding the place. People have claimed to see objects move on their own, semi-translucent or shadowy figures have been seen lurking about, and in the dead of night, ghostly screams are often heard from within the walls. This picture here has made the rounds for a while. As you can see, there's a man standing in front of the gate of the property, and in the background, you can clearly see what looks to be a ghostly figure in a white robe lurking behind him. Now, is this actually just a person who is very much alive, roaming through the abandoned property in a long white robe? At night, possibly, but there could also be a ghost afoot. Number 9, the Yeongdeok House in South Korea. If you ever find yourself in South Korea and feel like taking a spooky trip, you can visit this abandoned house. It's about a 3-hour high-speed train ride from Seoul, but you just might meet a ghost or 10, so maybe it's worth it for you. Plus, apparently you can just roam around for free. The Yeongdeok House is the final resting place of hundreds of soldiers. Around 700 of them died on this land during the Korean War, and of course their spirits are still said to haunt the property. As it turns out, the soldiers are all buried there. The home was built on a mass grave. Every owner who lived in the house experienced terrible misfortune. Not only did they encounter these tortured spirits, but they each met untimely deaths. Word got out about how seemingly cursed this home was, and nobody wanted to live there. It was eventually abandoned at some point in the 80s. Next up, we have the Edmonton haunted house. Now, I'm not clear as to the name of the owner of this house or the exact location, only that it is or was in Edmonton. This is an old story dating back to 1909. The owner would rent the house out, but they had a hard time securing regular tenants as each person who stayed there would rush out of the home, oftentimes in well under a month. An article at the time is quoted as saying, "From time to time, parties of different nationalities have approached the owner of the house and rented it, sometimes for a year, other times only for a few months. But generally, at the expiration of a few hours, they disappeared, bag and baggage, without even calling up the owner for a refund of the monies paid. The owner and his agent unaware of their departure until the next month's rent was due." Tenants would experience horrific paranormal activity in the home, with one story going that a tenant had locked himself in his room with furniture pressed up against the door, and yet somehow the door opened on its own, and from the dark hallway beyond, he heard a terrible disembodied groaning sound. Another story goes that an Asian businessman had rented out the home with 4 of his workers. They were planning to operate a laundry business from the home. They didn't even make it through the first night and fled from the home in the middle of the night, returning in the morning to collect their belongings. And at number 7, we have the Whaley House. Thomas Whaley began constructing this beautiful San Diego home in 1856, having proclaimed, "My new house, when completed, will be the handsomest, most comfortable and convenient place in town, or within 150 miles of here." It sounds like something Donald Trump would say. "My house is going to be the best place. We're 150 miles, but it's most comfortable. Everyone's gonna love it. It's gonna be the talk of the town." Anyway, for a long time, it actually was. It wasn't just the Whaley family home. It became the focal point of the entire town. There was a theater, a general store. It was the county courthouse. The San Diego County government rented out a portion of the home for its offices and records. There was a lot going on at this place, but the party started to end when the family began experiencing paranormal activity in the home. They would hear heavy footsteps making their way throughout the hallways at night, ghostly moans coming from throughout the house. They believed it was the spirit of a man named James Yankee Jim Robinson, who had been hanged on the property after stealing a boat. Harsh time to live. Steal a boat, you deserve death, sir. Not long after these paranormal experiences began, one of the daughters, Violet, took her own life, and the Whaleys ended up leaving the home, building a new one downtown. Number 6, the Borley Rectory. Built in 1862 in Essex, this home was once known as the most haunted house in England. It served as a residence for the Reverend Henry Dawson Ellis Bull and his family. Reports of strange occurrences, including unexplained footsteps, mysterious lights, eerie sounds, they began being reported around 1900 when 4 of Henry's daughters claimed to have seen a ghostly nun in the yard. And instead of going inside like any rational person would do in that situation, they decided to run over and try to talk with her, but the nun started to vanish the closer they got, apparently. And the rectory gained widespread attention when paranormal investigator Harry Price conducted an investigation there in 1929. At this time, there was a different family living in the home who had also started experiencing paranormal activity, like servant bells ringing even though they had all been disconnected. Price's research led to claims of the Borley Nun, a phantom coach, and other ghostly apparitions said to haunt the property. His findings were published in his book, The Most Haunted House in England, further fueling the rectory's haunted reputation, and the stories surrounding the Borley Rectory varied, with tales of tragic events such as a phantom nun and a supposed love affair ending in a unaliving. These stories added to the intrigue and really fed to this belief that this place was just a hotbed of paranormal activity. Number 5, the figure. This next story was posted to Reddit by user u/Kim Jong Funk. It goes like this. When I was in elementary school, I shared a queen-size bed with my older sister and our family dog, a mutt that looked like a short-haired lassie. We'd sleep on the foot of our bed every night. When I was about 6 years old, I woke up one night around midnight and saw a dark figure standing at the foot of the bed. The figure was entirely in black without any eyes or a face. I tried to wake up my sister, but she rolled over to go back to sleep. My sister must have accidentally kicked the dog, because the dog woke up and raised her head and started growling at the figure at the foot of the bed. The growling then woke up my sister, and she saw the figure and started screaming. When my parents came into the room and turned the light on, nothing was there. To this day, both my sister and I are adamant that we saw a ghost or other demon on our room. We know we weren't crazy either because the dog saw it too. Next up, we have the Lalaurie Mansion. The Lalaurie Mansion in New Orleans has a notorious history dating back to the mid-1800s. Built by Dr. Louis Lalaurie, who lived there with his wife Delphine in 1832. The mansion's dark secrets became public knowledge around 1834. Reports of cruelty and mistreatment of slaves led to a pretty shocking discovery of a torture chamber in the attic, revealing the gruesome reality of their actions, especially on Delphine's part. She was a full-on sadistic, cruel, evil woman. Reminds me a lot of Elizabeth Bathory, but worse, and some of the things that went on here are unimaginable. She would like break her victims' bones repeatedly, just completely deforming them, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. They were complete monsters. Over the years, the mansion gained a reputation, of course, for being haunted, with claims of ghostly apparitions and eerie occurrences going on there. Local legends and ghost stories have attributed the haunting to the tormented spirits of the victims who suffered within its walls. Next on the list, we have the Sally House. The Sally House in Atchison, Kansas now stands completely abandoned due to its rather dark history. Several deaths are known to have taken place in the home, including the home's original owner, Michael Finney, Richard Edwin Finney, William True, Agnes Finney True, and a young girl named Sally, who had collapsed due to a severe abdominal pain. She was brought to the home by her mother so that the town doctor who lived there could tend to her. He determined that she had appendicitis and that there was no time to delay a surgery. He started the surgery before the anesthesia had fully taken effect, and Sally woke up on the operating table when she suddenly died, apparently from shock. Her spirit was said to linger within the home, and years later, 1993, a young couple moved in. They claimed that their dog would bark at random empty spots in the home, especially in the upstairs nursery. Soon the man would begin receiving scratches on his body from an unknown source. The room that was formerly used for operations would become cold at times, and objects would sometimes move on their own. Suffice to say, that couple didn't live there for long, and the home is now used for paranormal investigations, where paranormal occurrences are still reported on to this day. Barry Pomeroy Castle, located in Devon, England. This place has a history dating back to the 15th century. It was originally built by the Pomeroy family, but later came under the ownership of the Seymours, a prominent noble family closely connected to the Tudor royalty. Over the years, the castle witnessed a series of renovations and expansions, but despite its impressive architecture and kind of picturesque setting, I mean, it's a castle, it looks beautiful, Barry Pomeroy Castle has also gained a reputation for being haunted, especially after having been abandoned in the late 17th century. Stories of supernatural occurrences and sightings have been reported on the property. One of the most famous tales involves the White Lady, believed to be the spirit of Margaret Pomeroy, who was allegedly imprisoned by her jealous sister and left to starve to death. Another ghostly figure is said to be the Blue Lady, and this one's really creepy though, because it's the soul of Eleanor Seymour, who reportedly fell to her death from the tower, and the Blue Lady is said to lure unsuspecting men to dangerous parts of the castle, especially the tower, where they'll fall to their death. Some claim to hear unexplained sounds and experience other strange phenomena. Tourists and visitors have reported feelings of unease and the sensation of being watched while exploring the ruins. And finally, we have the Amityville Horror House. Everyone has heard that name before. There have been tons of horror movies and books based on the goings-on in this house, and the tales surrounding it have become pretty famous in American folklore. For starters, 23-year-old Ron DeFeo Jr. had taken the lives of both his parents and his 4 siblings in the home as they slept. In 1975, the Lutz family purchased the home, but after just 28 days, they left, claiming to have experienced a string of paranormal occurrences. They said to have seen ooze sliding down their walls. There was a strange odor in the home, probably from the ooze. They'd hear doors slam on their own, as well as other objects moving, and they encountered swarms of flies right in the middle of winter. Even if there was no demonic spirit involved, yeah, I'd be out of that house with all that gross crap going on too.
At number 10 is the Island of Dolls in Mexico. Despite its World Heritage Site status alongside Mexico City, Xochimilco has garnered a reputation for its Isla de las Muñecas, or the Island of the Dolls. Hidden amidst a labyrinth of canals, this place is famous for the countless dolls and doll parts that dangle from trees and lie scattered amongst the grass. It looks like something straight out of a horror film, but the truth behind this eerie display is even more unsettling. The island was once home to a man named Julian Santa Barea, who took up residence there. Barea's journey into the bizarre began after he found an unalived body in a nearby canal. Terrified by this tragic discovery, he started collecting dolls and displaying them around the island. He believed that these dolls had the power to ward off evil spirits and keep him safe. It's a creepy concept, to say the least. For the brave souls out there, you can hire a boat and attempt to convince the driver to take you to the island. From the safety of the water, you can observe the decaying house, the hanging dolls, and the unsettling atmosphere of the place. But let me tell you folks, this is one of those locations where it's probably best to admire from afar. The Island of Dolls is steeped in disturbing history that's best left unexplored. At number 9 is Klomenskop, Namibia. A real-life ghost town has a story that might give you the chills. See, back in 1908, it was a bustling diamond mining hub, a place of extravagance and wealth. As fate would have it, richer diamond deposits were discovered south of Klomenskop, leading to an instant exodus of this fair-weathered inhabitants. Today, this once thriving town is an eerie, sand-filled labyrinth of abandoned houses. It's not just an ordinary ghost town. Klomenskop is famous for its appearances in movies like Dust Devil and The King is Alive. However, it's also renowned for its sinister aura. Those dilapidated structures are far from safe, with some on the brink of collapse. Add to the ever-shifting sands, which can easily trap the unsuspecting explorer. Yet the creepiness doesn't end there. Klomenskop is a breeding ground for the paranormal stories and eerie occurrences. Many who've dared to enter these forsaken houses have reported strange and unsettling experiences. So while it might be tempting to explore the place, it's best to leave it off your bucket list and let Klomenskop remain undisturbed in its eerie solitude. If you're enjoying the video so far, you can support the channel by pressing like, subscribing to Most Amazing, and ringing that notification bell. At number 8 is George's Church in Czech Republic. This is one of those abandoned places that should stay abandoned. Built back in 1352, this church has faced its fair share of troubles. Fires kept trying to claim it over the centuries, and things got even spookier in 1968 when the roof decided to collapse during a funeral service. The congregation thought it was haunted, and they wisely steered clear. But that didn't stop robbers and vandals from having a field day with it. Fast forward to 2012, and an art student decided to give the place a new lease on life by filling it with 30 ghost sculptures. Now it's known as the Ghost Church, and tourists from all around the world snap eerie photos and hang out with these lifeless specters. It's a creepy yet fascinating place, but remember, some abandoned spots should remain abandoned for good. Don't bother the ghosts. At number 7, Marco Island Dome Homes in Florida. These bizarre sci-fi-like structures are like something straight out of a Star Wars movie. Built back in 1981, they were meant to be a super cool, eco-friendly getaway for wealthy oil tycoons' family. But nature had other plans, and Florida's unforgiving weather and rising sea turned these homes into something out of a post-apocalyptic landscape. You won't find anyone living in these homes today, as it's highly unlikely anyone ever will. They stand as testament to man's ambition and nature's power. There are all kinds of theories and legends about why they exist, but the truth is, they're just a stark reminder that even the grandest human creations can be overtaken by the environment. So if you're thinking of exploring these dome houses, be cautious, and maybe leave the Jedi robes at home. At number 6 is the Buz Ludza monument nestled in the heart of Bulgaria. Imagine a place that looks like a UFO touchdown site. This bizarre structure was constructed towards the end of the Cold War and was intended to serve as the grandiose headquarters for the Bulgarian Communist Party. Decked out with posters of Lenin and Marx and a ceiling adorned with a glimmering red star, this place was no stranger to the strange events and political grandeur. But here's the twist. This intriguing monument was abandoned and sealed off from the public's prying eyes skies back in 1989. So while the temptation to explore this otherworldly dome is strong, it's vital to heed the keep out signs and respect the history this place holds, even if it means leaving your inner adventurer dormant. At number 5 is the Bielitz-Hillstatten Hospital in Germany, folks. This is a place where history and horror truly converge. This hospital's got a sinister past that'll send shivers down your spine. It's not just a spooky building, it's practically an encyclopedia of nightmares. It played host to tuberculosis patients, and if that's not eerie enough, it also tended to mustard gas and machine pew-pew victims during World War I, even harboring the infamous guy, the bad guy. Fast forward to World War II, and it was the go-to spot for fascist soldiers' medical needs. Post-World War II, the Soviets took over, using it as a military hospital until the Berlin Wall fell. Now, only a few wards are in use, but the rest, well, they're slowly being reclaimed by nature and vandals. Walk through those abandoned surgery and psychiatric wards and you'd think you're on a set of American Horror Story Asylum. At number 4 is Power Plant IM in Charleroi, Belgium, which might pique your curiosity as it's an abandoned industrial marvel, but it's on our list of top 10 places to steer clear of for a reason. Built back in 21, that being 100 years ago, not 2. This mammoth coal-burning facility boasted a colossal cooling tower capable of chilling 480,000 gallons of water every minute during its prime. However, its energy production came at a significant environmental cost, contributing to a staggering 10% of Belgium's carbon dioxide emissions. Greenpeace took notice and successfully lobbied for its closure in 2007. While the towering remnants of the power plant IM offer an eerie, picturesque backdrop, stepping inside is a risky proposition. The abandoned structures hide potential hazards, including structural instability and toxic remnants. This isn't a journey for the faint of heart, but rather an ill-advised attempt to explore a place where safety takes a backseat. So if you're after adventure, there are certainly safer destinations to satiate your curiosity about abandoned locations. At number 3 is Kennecott, Alaska, a once bustling mining town witnessed a flourishing copper industry worth a jaw-dropping $200 million from 1911 to 1938. That's like all kinds of billions now. It was a complete package. They had their own hospital, a skating rink, a tennis court, and even a dairy. But the years have not been kind to this place. Most of the buildings have been left to rot over 6 decades. It's a hauntingly beautiful ghost town, a snapshot of the past's glory. The National Park Service swooped in, taking control of the many structures and lands in 1998. Today you can visit the visitor center between Memorial Day and Labor Day, and if you want a unique event venue, the Recreation Hall is actually up for rent. I wouldn't. At number 2, Lake Reshen Bell Tower in Italy, a mysterious relic of the past emerging from the depths of Regency, a product of human intervention. The eerie beauty of this 14th century tower jutting out of the water gives off a surreal, otherworldly vibe. It's a bit like something you'd find in a fairy tale, but trust me, you're not gonna be in a Disney movie here. What makes it even more intriguing is the history behind it. See, beneath the calm waters lie the remains of a submerged village intentionally sacrificed to build the dam. Their stories, hidden beneath the surface, offer a haunting reminder of the past. Though it may seem like an inviting adventure, don't be too hasty. The lake might freeze in the winter, allowing you to walk right up to the tower, but there are some dangers in doing that, obviously. At number 1, Nicosia International Airport in Cyprus. It's a real haunting place, and it's got a history that's both fascinating and eerie. Back in the day when it was a bustling airport, a place where people were coming and going, embarking on exciting journeys. But then, in 74, the Turkish invasion of Cyprus happened, and the whole landscape changed. The airport was abandoned, and what's left now is like a time capsule that's been untouched for nearly 50 years. The planes that once soared through the skies are there, but they've turned into rusty relics of aviation history, just sitting out in the open, exposed to the elements. It's like something out of a post-apocalyptic movie where the world has moved on, but this place is stuck in time. But that's not all. Inside the terminal, the check-in counters and boarding areas have all gathered thick layers of dust and occasional bird droppings. It's like a scene from a long-forgotten era. Exploring this airport may sound cool, but honestly, it's a journey that's just best left to the imagination and the history books and the YouTube videos.
Think these critters are weird? Hold on to your tinfoil hats, folks, because our next video is about to beam you straight into the Twilight Zone. Click that shiny next video button faster than you can say probe to dive into the wild world of people who claim they've been the unwilling lab rats in E.T.'s science fair. We're talking folks who swear they've had more invasive experiences than your average airport security pat-down. These unlucky guinea pigs are sporting battle scars that make crop circles look like child's play. And their stories are so out there, even their therapists need therapy. Are they spinning yarn taller than the Washington Monument? Or did they really get a front row seat to some intergalactic mischief? There's only one way to find out. So grab your salt shaker, for all those grains you'll need, slap on your best skeptical grimace, and let's go judge some extraterrestrial shenanigans together. After all, the truth is out there, and it might just have a twisted sense of humor.